Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. My name is Bea Jimenez. My colleague is Rachel Gog, and we are learning engineers at the Teaching and Learning Technologies group. Before diving into the agenda, we are going to talk about the learning objectives for today. So Rachel and I are going to talk about what an empathy map is. Don't worry if that term is unfamiliar to you. It will be very familiar by the end of today's session. The goal of this session is to make sure that you understand what an empathy map is and how it connects to the UDL Practicum, and give you this empathy map tool that will allow you to understand your students' perspectives better and also empathize with them. Ultimately, this tool will enable you to reflect on how implement more effective course policies, maybe assessments, or any other instructional practices that can benefit your students' learning, right? So today's agenda, we are going to see what an empathy map is in just a second. And we are going to also see some examples and walk through about what an empathy map is. Rachel is going to walk you through the process of how you would do an actual empathy map. And then you will be creating your own empathy map based of the students that you would encounter in your class. And then finally, we are going to do a recap and a wrap up about what you have learned from the session and from the activity. So without any further ado, let's talk about what an empathy map is. An empathy map is usually the first step in design thinking. For those who are not very familiar with this term, design thinking is a process that traditionally used by designers that will allow you to design solutions with the problem statement in mind. This tool really relies on observing with empathy how people interact with the environment, right? Empathy maps are standard tools in multiple fields like marketing or design. And usually marketers use this tool to understand how humans interact with something, with a product or a service. Basically, the idea is to create a map, a visual tool that captures how people think and feel, and also what they might be saying or doing. The reason why we want to do this with you today is to find maybe new instructional practices or tools that can benefit your students' learning. Also, it can benefit the innovation. Sometimes, especially after teaching for a few years, we start feeling comfortable about what we are teaching and how we are teaching. Therefore, sometimes we skip trying new things, or sometimes that impedes us being more innovative or shifting things in our classes. So this empathy map tool is just a nice way to spin your perspective or start thinking about new things that you can implement in your class. As you can see here, traditional empathy maps are split into 4 quadrants: says, thinks, does, and feel, with the user or persona in the middle. In this case, our personas are going to be segment of your student population. So for instance, here in this slide, this is an example about a consumer, Jamie, who wants to buy a TV. Jamie is saying that she wants to buy a TV, right? She wants something reliable. She's asking herself what's the best size for her. Jamie probably is thinking, why so hard to buy a TV? Too many options. She feels completely overwhelmed and anxious about the process and making the right choice. And so for many of you, you have experienced different kind of students who are taking your classes. So they might be students who are athletes, or maybe they are early in the in the career, or maybe they are students who are majors or minors, students who are fulfilling just credit requirements or course distribution, right? So maybe it's not they are not as motivated as others to take the class. So each of those students are going to say, feel, or think differently. So today we are going to focus in just one segment of your student population who's taking your course. So you can really think about what those students might be wanting or what their goals might be for your course, right? I would say one thing, and is that empathy map usually is coming from a source of data like focus groups or direct interviews or surveys, etc. But for today, we are not going to do the research piece. We don't have enough time to do that. But we want you to think about your previous experiences with your students, things that you have you have heard them say, CTEC results, and basically any other type of feedback that you have received in the past, right? That kind of feedback can be just things that you have seen in the CTEC surveys, direct feedback that you receive from them, your perceptions in the classroom, past experiences, etc. Okay. So we want to acknowledge that this exercise today is about learning about this process, right? So hopefully you will be finding some ways that it can be helpful for your course in the future. If you are going to engage with this tool deeply in the future, maybe we want to encourage you to root this process into real student feedback and data. But for today, let's try to think about what past experiences and what you already know about your students. Okay. Today, the goal is just to focus in one segment of your class, right? If you're going to use empathy map in depth in the future, we recommend you to just generate more than one empathy map. So maybe you have identified in your class that you have students who are just who are first generation students. Students who are just minors, and maybe this course is not as important as other courses, and students who are very motivated to take the class because it's going to be their, I don't know, research topic in the future, right? Something like that. So you probably in your class, you have different segments, right? And each segment of your students can be a persona. We are going to call each segment persona. So the idea is to empathize with each of those personas and create a different empathy map for each of those segments or personas. But right now, for today, we're just going to focus on one persona, one segment of your class. So you can choose.
Sorry, Bea.
Sorry, go ahead.
Finish your thought.
No, go ahead. Oh.
Well, I was just going to point out that I think, so when you eventually do more than one, what you're going to find is that you're going to see repetitive practices, and that you also may find that you notice, this is essentially, right, the bedrock of the UDL approach, which is that you're going to maybe start to notice that something that helps a specific persona of student, you know, it's certainly not going to hurt other students, or it's going to also apply in other cases. So it's less that whatever you're going to create in your class is going to be so different based on the personas, and more that honestly, it's going to allow you to identify some trends and some practices that are going to build for a number of different students. So it's not going to be, I think, long-term as like this student needs this, but this student needs this kind of dichotomy.
Okay. Well, if everything is clear, I'm going to pass the word to Rachel. who is
Yes, so I actually kind of started to go here, which was that, right, you're coming to this workshop in the context of a UDL practicum, right, specifically. And so really, again, the empathy mapping is helping you come to these questions about your student's perspective. Why do I care about this thing? Why should I learn it? Why is it important to me? Again, and as we have here, that you, as the expert in this class, you know what it is. But students often don't see that. It needs to be stated really explicitly for them. And so this empathy map process is sort of just helping you get into a better practice of understanding the student's position so that you're better at explaining your position to them and why they should care about the class and why it's important. Okay, great. Moving on then. Let's get to the details here. Oh, sorry. I basically just said this. I forgot there was a section a little bit here. So I have a little example here of an empathy map process that Jean Clipperton, one of our original contributors, did something very similar in one of her classes. So she looked at a student, we named them Jean in honor, and they looked at a student who isn't a major in their field, but is taking the course to fulfill a degree requirement. And it is also the first day of class. Now, that example empathy map that we showed you at the start was very broad, right? Oh, someone wants to build a TV. But what we're finding is that empathy maps in the sort of context of higher ed and instructional design, thinking about specific points in your class can be very helpful and really help you ground this in a specific experience for your students. Great, so the next slide, please. So what is Jean, my student, saying to friends? She's saying, I just got to get through this class. Maybe she asked around before the quarter start. Does anyone know if this professor grades hard? And then right away to the instructor, they're saying things like, are there group projects? Is there attendance grade? Is the final cumulative? They want to know about the grades. Right? So from the instructor perspective, sometimes these students are feeling very grade focused and very much not about the learning. And I'll take the next. Yeah, thank you. This person is probably also coming to it from a little bit of anxiety. They're wondering, this isn't in my field. I don't know this subject well. How much math is there? Oh, why? I have so many other things I'd rather spend my time on. Why do I need this class? And then they're doing, probably before the quarter, they checked on Reddit and some other websites to see which section they should sign up for. Was there one instructor who's reportedly easier at grading or reportedly more interesting to be in class with? They're going to wait to see if they really have to buy the course materials. Do I really need that textbook? So that means that the first couple weeks of your class, they may not have purchased your course materials, and that can have a real effect on their participation and engagement. Finally, what they're feeling, and we're extrapolating here, right? That they want to do the minimum to get the grade that they want. Notice I didn't say an A, although a lot of Northwestern students want A's. That may not be their goal in this class. They are focused on the grade that they have decided they need. They want straightforward, easy assignments, and they're nervous about stepping outside of their comfort zone because what's the payoff for them here? It's not my major. So this is where a student is entering your class on that first day. And of course, where their head is maybe not at all where I want their head to be, which is about understanding the importance and relevance of this class for them, even if they're not a major. So what do I do? So I'll take my next slide, please. So how could this help inform my decisions? Yeah, thank you. So in Canvas, some things I would do I'd provide straight up front the key competencies, any previous foundational ideas that this person who is not a major in my field might have missed. Take a real thought about what are the things that if they don't have some literacy in, they're going to struggle right away with, but I don't have time to teach in this class. Link a couple of those foundational videos into your first module or your day one class so that if you see students who are struggling with that right at the start, you have those resources available for them at the very beginning. Next, You could do a pre-class survey to have students suggest material or content that they might find relevant to course concepts. Now, of course, pre-class, it's a little bit like, do they really know? But the more that you can activate any pre-knowledge they have, the more they're already starting to get invested in the class. So a pre-class survey is a great option. On the very first day of class, in addition to reviewing my syllabus policies, I'm going to give some examples of how my class connects to some real world or somehow relevant examples to what the world that Jean lives in. Make that effort right up front to connect things. I think we've got, and then also have at least one major assessment that has more than one submission type. So somewhere along the way in your course, someone could write a paper, or they could record a presentation, or they could provide some other sort of submission that proves to you that they know their content. So giving them that choice is a great way for students to feel more like they have some control over the class. Great. And then again, as much as you can throughout the course, I would really try and bring in examples that connect to what we're learning to the real world. That can feel a little artificial at some point. It really sort of depends on your class. But the more you can kind of take a step back and try and put your content within a larger context, that helps all of your students, but especially a student in Jean's situation. So now we're going to give it a shot here. And when you go through, Bea alluded to this earlier, is that as we're talking now and in the future, it really try and be as specific as you can. So think about things students said in CTEX, any surveys that you have used in class, interviews that you've had with TAs or students giving you feedback on things. In the future, if you really wanted to dig into this process, again, we'd recommend that you are sort of try and capture some more data at certain points in your quarter to improve your empathy map. Any research in your field. For example, if you're in a language instruction area, there is a lot of great research out there thinking at attitudes and perceptions of students in a particular classroom environment. Using that peer-reviewed research that is out there can be a very helpful starting place as well. Your department might have some data for you about, are my students majors, non-majors? What do they know coming in? Assemble your data. You're a researcher. Use those skills to really get as specific as you can. And of course, I don't expect you to have all this with you today. So we're learning the process here. So when you're thinking about your student personas, again, it's good to be specific. So maybe you don't have to choose all of these attributes, but if some of these, especially are common ones that you see in your class, consider adding some of these qualifiers to your thing. Is it a student athlete, a first generation student, a transfer student, a first year, etc.? You know your students' personas best. What are some attributes that might be relevant here? Is it a first course in their subject? Is it that student that you know is going to have disrupted attendance for a variety of reasons? And then when in the quarter are you thinking about this student? Start of the quarter, midterm, final. These points in time can help you, again, sort of pinpoint the practices that are relevant. I want you to give your student a name and write 1 to 2 sentences about that student, similarly to what we did with Jean earlier. Okay, and you're going to fill out that map a little bit. What do they say? What do they think? What do they feel? What do they do? And remember, this can also be, what do they not do? So in our example, we had a student who did not buy their book. As an instructor, think about both what the student does that you see, and maybe think about what the things you know a student does that are outside of the classroom that are reflecting their attitudes and thoughts to it. Oh, yes. And please include then, what are some of the student challenges? So it might be motivation, it might be time management. There are a million of them, right? And then what are the student goals for your course? So think through those, and then try and think about, how could your empathy map inform your choices? This could be everything from literally how you build a Canvas page, how often or how you communicate, your course attendance policy, your participation policy, assessment types, etc. Think all across the board, from the software to the real life, to the classroom, to the homework. All parts of your course are open for conversation here. So try and come up with some ideas on that. One thing that happened in a previous version of this, the practicum in this specific session, was I did have a group who did a really great map of a student who needed a lot from the instructor. They may or may not have had an ANU accommodation, but they were that student who was really asking for a lot from that teacher. And what I really liked that I saw in that map was that the group said that they were going to try and form a care team, so that they were going to connect with the student's advisor, connect with another instructor maybe, or find some other key humans in this student's life or academic journey that they could share this burden with. Because we do know sometimes students are going to come to you and ask you for a lot and come again and come again. And there are times when you're going to want to give that support, but you do need to be protective of your own mental health and time. And we want to encourage you to do that. So I really liked this idea of someone saying, sometimes I'm going to have a student who might want more of me than I can really give. That doesn't mean I just have to slam the door and feel like I failed them and they are frustrated with me. I really liked the suggestion of finding some other people that you could pass around some of the care for this student. So one thing that I saw in a previous class that I really wanted to share, and it leads into my next point, which is really remember that take that +1 approach. There are so many great suggestions here. At the end of the practicum, you're going to be totally overwhelmed with new ideas. You do not need to implement them all. Choose a few, choose one, and go from there. It is the right place to start. You are not failing if you don't completely overhaul everything and go from there. So have a great day, everyone.